Okay. All right. Well, good to see everybody. Welcome. Hope y'all came with an open mind and open hearts, ready to have some fun, learn something, ask some questions. We're going to have a good time, all right? I'm going to give just a couple minutes to a couple more people that might be coming, but let me ask you a question while we're getting going here. How many people have either heard me speak before or else this is your first time? Raise your hand. I just want to make sure you're paying attention, okay? That ought to be everybody, right? I'll tell you, don't confuse. I already did it. I already blew it. I confused them already. All right. Well, thank you that are joining us on Facebook Live as well. And so we're going to get into it tonight. And I want to start with 1986. 1986 in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. They built two amazing condominiums on the beach there in Brazil. This was the premier location to live in Brazil. All the wealthy people had places there on the beach. Beautiful. And that year, when they had the carnival going on, and thank God the carnival was going on, one of those condominiums collapsed, killed 8 people. Would have killed hundreds if it hadn't been at the time that it actually occurred. Brand new buildings, beautiful, state of the art, collapsed. So guess what, man? They're sending engineers from all over the world, right? They're coming down there. They're trying to figure out what in the world, how could this happen, right? And so as they did their investigation, they did their research, and they're going through this, here's what they found out. The contractors used some beach sand and salt water to make some of their concrete. They cut some corners. They saved some cost, but it didn't have the structural integrity and strength that they needed, and the building collapsed. You know what I'm afraid of in America today? This is something I think about a lot, is that people don't flinch about spending $8 for a Starbucks that's loaded down with about 15 teaspoons, of sugar, okay? But they don't spend $10 on actually preventing and improving their health. You know what we call health care today? Really is sick care. Nobody does anything until they're sick. And then they want what they want is, and what they have to have, unfortunately, at that time, is crisis care. Now, I'm going to tell you something today. Before we get into our talk, and this is going to tie into this, there's 3 types of care. Okay? I'm going to give them to you in order of what's most important. Number 1, self-care. That's why you're here tonight, is so that you can learn how to take better care of yourself. This is the most important type of care, is self-care. These are things that you can do, all right? And how many people, by the way, believe that there is something that you could do in the next 30 days, okay, to absolutely destroy your health?
Yes.
Yeah, you could do that, couldn't you? You could do that in a day. Guess what, though? You already know how y'all thought where I was going. Is guess what? There's something you can also do to improve your health. Amen? Now, here's the powerful part, guys. Guess whose choice it is? It's yours, and it's mine. It's every one of us, right? It's individual. And it's not something I can do. Self-care is self. This is my decision, something only I can do, okay? Number 2, healthcare. Healthcare is something that someone else provides for you that actually increases your health, okay? Now, let me ask you, Nine, I saved you a seat right on the front row. One of my favorite patients right there, favorite people. Where's Joaquin? He should have came with you.
He's on his way back.
Okay. Well, tell him I missed him. Tell him I missed him. Okay. Healthcare is something that is done for you that actually improves your health. Now, let me tell you something. I don't know if you thought about this or not, but there has never, ever been a drug that's been created to improve your health. What are they created for? They're created to change physiology, to manage a symptom, or maybe to lower blood pressure or to lower blood sugar or something like that. But in no way has ever been a drug created. So because unfortunately the majority of our what we call healthcare in America today is drug care, we don't do any of this. These are things like, hey, going to the dentist and getting your teeth cleaned. These are things like going to the chiropractor to get a healthier spine or nervous system or something, going to a nutrition coach and learning how to eat better. This will be something that somebody helped you with that actually improved your health, right? And then the third one, and critical, but thank God that it is, this is emergency, okay, or crisis care, okay? We got to have that. And you thank God when you need it, that you got it. I mean, I have twins. My wife and I mean, she actually did most of the work on that. Okay, I'm going to be honest about that. Okay, but they were born at 28 weeks developed. You guys remember this. You were in our practice back in those days. They were born in 2001 and they weighed 2 pounds. And so my son Samuel spent 73 days in intensive care in NICU. My daughter Faith spent 62 days in intensive care. You know what? When you have a situation like that, you thank God for good emergency care, good crisis care. And if you got an incredible, terrible illness, a major accident or something like that, thank God you're in America where we have the best emergency care there is to help people, okay? But unfortunately, if you go in there with a chronic illness or with a health problem and expect them to help you, you're in the wrong place. I always tell people who've been in a car accident, they go to the ER and they look at them, they check them, they take x-rays, whatever, and they say, you're okay. And I said, let me define that for you, what that means in the emergency room. That means there's no blood gushing out of you. There's no broken bones. You're not going to die today, most likely, okay? That's what they mean, and literally in that setting, because the next person may not be okay. You understand? We have to get our mind around tonight. What we're talking about is how can we improve our self-care and how can we make sure we have the right health care in place that we're getting the results we're hoping for. And then we hope that we never have to go into this realm. We thank God it's there if we need it, but we hope we don't have to use it very often, right? So how we do that? Well, tonight we're going to focus on the gut. You know, and Hippocrates said something about the gut a long time ago. Y'all may have heard of the guy. He's pretty well known, okay? Hippocrates said that look to the gut for the source of most illnesses. And so he said the gut and the spine and nervous system will be the key. And you know what? He was way ahead of his time, but he was right on the money. So tonight we're going to call this leaky gut syndrome part 1, how to deal with this. But we're going to tie this into the gut-brain axis here at the end, okay? And so what we're going to look at here first is what is leaky gut. I promised you that I would define this for you, okay? And so I'm going to draw. I'm not a very good artist, okay? I loved my art teacher, but he didn't want me back for year 2, okay? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're still buds today, but he's still like, that's not your gift, man, okay? So, but I'm going to draw this out, all right? So I'm going to draw a gut lining, and what I mean by this is really an intestinal lining, okay? So in your intestinal lining, you have cells called enterovite cells. These enterovite cells butt up to each other and form what's called a tight junction. You have actin and myosin. These are like kind of like muscle connections here that hold these cells together. And so what this does is in here is where your food is. Your food comes into here and it begins to get broken down, okay? And then it gets broken down into small particles and it actually passes between these cells through these tight junctions into, guess what's on the other side of this lining is your blood supply. Because you can't get anything out of your food until it gets into your blood and goes to your cells. And you can't get it into your blood until it's broken down into its essential components, amino acids and vitamins and minerals and things that you need. So the digestive tract is to break it down, is to pass through between the cells through the tight junction and go into the bloodstream. So guess what? Really, literally, everybody's gut leaks. It's supposed to. But when we say leaky gut syndrome, what we mean is it's hyper leaky or hyper permeability. So what's happened is now the tight junction has been broken and there's been an opening of the gap, and now bigger things can pass through. Here's the problem. So when you start off with a protein is a big molecule. It has a minimum of 30 amino acids combined together, okay? That has to be broken down into what's called peptides, okay? Peptides, now you got down to 15 amino acids. Here we got 30, okay? And then we get down to the actual amino acid itself. Now, the amino acid is small enough that it can go through the tight junction. That's what it's supposed to do. But what happens if one of these big fellas falls down through there and gets into the blood supply? What about a protein like gluten or casein in dairy? These proteins are hard to break down and they're large. If they get into the bloodstream down here, what's going to happen? Sticky blood? Yep. Allergic reaction. Why so? And what were you going to say? Yeah, inflammation's huge. You're right. We're going to get to that. All those things are true. Okay? So here's what happens. God gave you a defense system to fight foreign invaders called your immune system. Your immune system is going to pick up anything in this blood that's not supposed to be there. And you know what it's going to say? Excuse me, sir, you're not supposed to be here. We're going to have to remove you. So the white blood cells are going to attack that, and they're going to try to remove that out of the bloodstream to protect you, right? Because it's foreign. It's not supposed to be there. It's not on their approved list, okay? So what happens then? Okay, they get rid of that, but what happens the next day when you have gluten again? You got leaky gut, and now it shows up again. Now they're going to say, we warned you the first time. You came back again. Now we're going to put a flag on you that you're a bad person. Not that James is a bad person, but you're a bad person, and every time we see you, we're going to send an army to attack you now. You have now what's called an antibody. You have a tag on you that triggers an immune response, which is massive. Not just a local response, but a systemic, whole body inflammatory immune response. That's called a food sensitivity. Okay? This is the progression of leaky gut. This is how it happens, right? And so what happens is your immune system gets so weak that you don't even realize that you're reacting to this. You just wonder why you don't have good energy. Why do I have so much brain fog? Why do my joints ache? Why do I have fatigue? Why do I not sleep at night? Why do I wake up in the middle of the night? I can't go back to sleep. All these type of things can be all symptoms of this process we're talking about right here. Okay? Guess what? That's not the only thing, though. So now, what if there's bacteria in here? Bacteria is big. Oh, now it's got a wide open, it'll go right through. Bacteria now gets into your blood. What again? Immune system is having to upregulate. What if that bacteria gets in your blood or your virus, and then it gets into tissue and it hides in tissue? Now the immune system will attack your tissue to try to get rid of that bug, and guess what you call that? An autoimmunity. Now you have your immune system attacking self-tissue. Attacking your own tissue, right? Parasites, other things begin to pass through here. And so here's the thing, this thing can get, your gut can get so bad that this is not the only problem. Then the cells start to break down and they separate, and it can actually pass through the cell itself. That's like when you get that and you get endotoxemia, which means that you've got things, endotoxins getting into your blood supply. That's the worst case scenario. Okay, this is progression of leaky gut. Does that make sense? This is what it is. Okay, and that's how you get it. We're going to go through some of the things that contribute to this in just a minute here. Okay, whoops, I went the wrong way. Let's go forward. Let's don't go back. We already been there. All right, let's talk about the vicious cycle. So you mentioned inflammation. Yeah, so first thing that's going to happen when you start, that's probably going to lead to this, is going to be some type of inflammation. Let me see if I could think of any possible reasons we might have inflammation. Starbucks, 60 grams of sugar. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Highly processed diet loaded with chemicals. Maybe that's part of it. We will get into some others later. But you got inflammation. You get all kinds of things that begin to happen because of this. Nutrient absorption is a problem now. And you wonder why now, so your skin's not as healthy, your hair's not as healthy, you know what I'm saying? Why am I always anemic, okay? Why am I having B vitamin deficiencies, things like that? Why's my vitamin D always low? Different things start happening. Immune response we've already talked about, and then the autoimmune disease is the end product of this leaky gut cycle. So what about mechanisms that cause it? Now look, if you don't have any of these things here, you don't have anything to worry about today. Okay, I'm going to go through them. I'm going to go through them. That's why I didn't. Let's just go through the first category, okay? How about diet? Well, we just talked about diet, okay? Highly processed food, chemicals, sugar, inflammatory foods. Most inflammatory foods, Doc, if I'm not mistaken, gluten, dairy, soy, and sugar. There's your four. That's the four food groups in most people in America is right there, okay? Yes, ma'am.
So on the soy, is I don't pronounce it correctly ever.
Adami, yeah.
Thank you. I never say it right. So isn't that a soy?
Yes, soybean, yeah.
And it's supposed to be a high protein though, and as far as touted. So is that a bad soy or a good soy?
Is there any good soy, Doc? Okay, all right. I'm just making sure. Okay. Well, here's the problem. It's a protein. You just said high protein, matter of fact. Okay, guess what we just said the problem is? Proteins. Okay, what your immune system reacts to is proteins, not carbohydrates. Okay, people say, well, I'm lactose intolerant. Okay, lactose intolerant is a different problem. That's a lack of an enzyme to break down a carbohydrate in the milk. But most people that say they're lactose intolerant really are dairy sensitive. Okay, but the immune system reacts to proteins. So there are no good soy proteins, okay? There are some that are better than others, some that are worse than others, okay? But they all can have this inflammatory response, and they all do cause some level of inflammation for everybody. I always say regarding gluten, there's two types of people. There's those that should be off of gluten, and there's those that must be off of gluten, okay? That means that they got an immune response. They have a sensitivity already, okay? Yes, sir.
Soy on the market is GMO.
Yeah, 96 or more percent of it is GMO. So, I mean, unless it's organic, you're right. It's all GMO. And so is corn, by the way. You know, so you already got something. What does it mean by GMO? It means that the genetic makeup of it has been manipulated. So what that means to your immune system is it already looks suspicious. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, we haven't seen this guy look like that before. Is this really good or not?
It's been manipulated to stave off, to not be subjected to the pesticide, right? That's being sprayed on the crops.
No, they do different things. They genetically modify things, okay, for one reason, really. Only one reason.
Money. Yeah.
Money. The root of all evil is the love of money, okay? And the Bible is true that it's all about this. So they make more, they store longer, you know what I'm saying? All these things is what it's all about. It's not about health. They don't say, oh, let's try to make this more healthy. Well, how about just leaving it the way God made it, and maybe it will actually work, right? So what about medications? Now, see, if you don't take any medications and you don't have a bad diet, you're all good, okay? Now, but guess what? You know what the biggest problem, the biggest medication, what's the one that's going to destroy your gut? What's the biggest drug that's going to destroy your gut? Antibiotics. Antibiotics. And that's what we pass out like candy. Like there's no ill effects to antibiotics, okay? And so major problem, right? But guess what? Things like even non-steroidal anti-inflammatories that we take a lot over the counter because we got pain and stuff is thinning your gut and causing leaky gut. Okay, not to mention steroids and all kinds of other things they're being passed out like they don't have any ill effects. Infections, okay, yeast overgrowth is a big one. H. pylori. What about stress? I mean, nobody's got stress in here, right? What does stress do? Stress produces a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol causes the gut lining to thin. The mucosal lining of the gut is affected, but it also does some other things. It decreases motility and digestibility in your gut. So guess what? Now you've turned off digestion. You're having a hard time getting your food broken down completely. That's going to make your gut more inflamed, and then you got more risk of proteins not getting broken down passing into the bloodstream.
I think I just recently heard that you have to be in parasympathetic mode for digestion to truly
Parasympathetic, but you're right.
Sorry,
Yeah, parasympathetic. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, your parasympathetic, your rest and digest mode. Okay, sympathetic is your fight and flight mode. Okay, when you're stressed, you're sympathetic. Okay, when you get sympathetic dominance, it's hard to digest. You don't digest well. You just don't. And you don't sleep well, by the way, either. And your hormones don't do well, and that's another problem. Then you got neurologic problems. Brain imbalances, brain injuries, inflammatories, concussions. You know, tonight we're going to look at the end of this seminar. We're going to talk about gut on fire, brain on fire, gut on fire. If somebody has a head trauma, they get hit in the head, I promise you, their gut's going to suffer for that too. And a lot of times, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about, hey, man, we need to get the gut healthy again. And then the last one is metabolic things like blood sugars and autoimmunities and that. So, hey, if you don't have any of this stuff here, okay, you're good. You don't need to be in this talk, maybe, okay? But I guess what? We're not getting off of that list without here's what I told. Who needs to come to this seminar? My patients asked me. I said, if you've already worked on your gut and you've got an ongoing program to maintain it, you're good. If you don't, you got leaky gut. That's simple. Can't get by in a marriage. Now, it's a matter of how bad it is. We're going to look at the degrees of it because there are different degrees, but autoimmunity is the most severe, and that's where your body is attacking itself, okay? That's what we don't want ever to happen. There's stages of autoimmunity, like you have it silently, you don't know what's going on. Then you get to the point where you have actually symptoms, but you still don't have enough antibodies to get diagnosed with the disease, like rheumatoid or like Hashimoto's or like pernicious anemia or some other condition. Then you finally get enough antibodies and enough tissue damage to get a diagnosis of a disease. Okay, so that's the progression of it. It can be going on silently and you don't even know it. So here's the tie-in now. Okay, intestinal permeability going to lead to gluten sensitivity and other cross-reactive foods and autoimmunity. The reason gluten is such a big deal is because it is the most inflammatory and immune-stimulating protein because of it's been hybridized, not genetically modified, but it has been changed. The original wheat had 14 chromosomes. The modern wheat has like 44 chromosomes. It's totally different. Now, the genetic order of the amino acids has not been changed like it would in a genetically modified, but it is totally different. And so that's why a lot of people react to it and have problems. Yes, ma'am.
Is that why a lot of times you leave the country and eat those kind of things?
That's a good question. We had this conversation recently in my office with my team. The first time I tried this, and when I was gluten-free, I think this was right around 2016, maybe about 10 years ago, is I was in Europe and I said, I'm going to try some wheat and see if I react. Because I'm gluten-free, I know I have the reaction. I've had testing and different things to confirm it. Whenever I do to any patient, I always test myself first. I'm like the dummy, okay? You know what I'm saying? If I survive it, then I try it on them, you know? But first time I went over there, I didn't have a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you why that is, okay? So there's several reasons. There's more ancient wheat trying to come back, and some people that have gluten issues can tolerate that, and some people can't. But here's the other thing. There's one other kicker to this you need to know. America deaminates their wheat.
What's that called?
Deaminate. Okay, deamination. Okay, what they do then is they take the gluten, okay, or gliadin protein is what it's really called, and they combine it with a transglutaminase enzyme. This is called deamination. So what does this do? Well, it makes it store longer. It makes it blend up into water easier. You can make sauces out of it easier, okay? But what it also does now is that doesn't look the same to your immune system. Now, just the deamination process alone makes it more reactive, and that's why sometimes we go out of other countries don't do this. And so sometimes you don't have that reactability. But I will say this, just 2 years later when I was over there, and I was in Italy then, I think, and all of a sudden I saw a gluten-free shop. That tells me it's coming. I was like, what in the world? I never saw one of these before. And then I was working with a German missionary. You weren't here then, but he came over here to see us, and we worked with some brain-based stuff with him. And he was back in Germany, and he started calling me and saying, hey, man, we got gluten-free products now in the grocery stores. We never had these before. I was like, things are changing. Things are changing. You know, so I don't know about now, but sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But there's a whole cycle that goes on. And now, look, I want to tie this together with this. Okay, gut inflammation. Okay, we've talked about that a lot. Okay, produces what's called cytokines, inflammatory cytokines. Cytokines are messengers. Okay, so they carry signals to different parts of the body. So when you have a cytokine excited in your gut, it talks to the brain, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it causes the brain to be inflamed by upregulating the microglial cells in your brain. So cytokines, inflammatory cytokines activated in the gut because of inflammation, brain inflammation activated without any other signal. In other words, there's no trauma, there's no infection, there's nothing else to cause it except for what's going on in the gut. The other way around works too. If the head gets injured and there's inflammatory process there, you have cytokines, these messengers, they're going to go to the gut also, and they're going to cause gut inflammation. So this is how the gut and the brain tie together, okay? So let me tell you some of the biggest things I've noticed over the years with patients that have developed neurodegenerative conditions, things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, is that I notice when I start taking their histories and start finding out about them, they've had gut problems for a long time. And sometimes it started because they had maybe head traumas and then the gut, but most of the time they had gut problems and then they started having neurologic brain problems. You cannot separate these two. So tonight, what I want to tell you is you've got to take care of both. Okay, so let me give you some ideas on some things that you need to be doing as far as self-care goes. And then I'm going to tell you how we evaluate where we're at in the progression of this and how do you turn it around, because it can be turned around, okay? Your body is self-healing. Y'all do realize that, right? Yeah. If you do the right things, okay, if you give it the right stuff, okay, you put it in the right condition, it does what it was created and designed to do, which is heal and then operate normally and stay healthy. That's genetic. They did this whole genome project. You know, what an amazing, I mean, I'm talking about tons of research looking at this. And what they came back with was basically 99.7% of all chronic illnesses are lifestyle related and not genetic. How about that? Now, they said your lifestyle does affect your epigenetics, which means the expression of your genes. Remember, genes, you got this huge library of genes. I'm talking about, we don't even know how many, hundreds of thousands, probably more of genes. And you don't read all those books in that library at the same time. What determines what book is taken off the shelf and opened up and played out in your life is your lifestyle. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to deal with, we want to get a healthy gut. Let me give you 5 things here real fast, okay? Number 1 is, let me ask you, how's your sleep? If you don't sleep well, your gut is not as healthy as it needs to be. You must have good sleep to have a good, healthy gut, okay? Hormones matter, and these hormone cycles matter, okay? Keeping a healthy gut microbiome, that's the bacteria balance in your gut, keeping a healthy mucosal lining, okay, and that up here on these microvilli here on top of this, you've got a mucosal lining. This is where you got things like probiotics, right? Y'all have heard of those? Okay, probiotics, we got to have those. That's our microbiome, okay? So guess what? The American diet, this is what scientists say, that our diet today has about 1/1,000,000th of probiotics of what some of our ancestors had before we got so smart and started having food products instead of real food. Since we started washing everything, since we started using commercial fertilizers and started using all these herbicides and pesticides on our ground and killing all the bacteria out of our ground, and then the ground won't grow anything, so you dump chemicals in it, you dump in all the commercial fertilizers to try to make it grow something, and now you wonder why we don't have any bacteria in our gut. We're not getting any bacteria out of, no, we're not getting any good bacteria. And I'll tell you another problem. I'll get to your question in just a minute. Where are we supposed to get this start of bacteria at? You know, when a baby is in the mother's womb, it's completely aseptic. Where do you get that? Going right through the birth canal. Okay? Now, so guess what the problem is? Well, we hate bacteria, evidently, in our country, and we have a war against it. We kill it all. There is in such an aseptic environment that babies are born into in a hospital setting today that they don't even get a start of bacteria. And some of them are C-sections. Can I tell you studies that have been done on this? That right now, if we took a fecal sample of everybody in here and we studied it, we could tell which one of you were born vaginally here and which ones were born C-section. Based on what type of bacteria you have in your gut. Is that not amazing? I mean, how many things are going wrong? And you're right. Yeah, we're not breastfeeding. We're not doing a lot of other things to nurture that gut environment. Yes, that passes through there. All this stuff now is just going away. And we're wondering, why are these kids sick all the time? Why do we got all these autoimmune? Why do we got all this autism? Why do we got all this other stuff going on? Well, maybe we ought to go back and look what we did when we didn't have all that stuff going on. And maybe if we did that, we'd be better off. Does that make sense to just me? I mean, history will teach you a lot if you'll be honest with it. You know, somebody said this about recently about history. He said history is not to either like or dislike. History is to learn from, okay? Don't try to change it until you like it, okay? Now, if you don't like it, learn from it, okay? If you do like it, repeat it, okay? But don't change it because then you can't learn from it. You've got to be honest with ourselves and be honest with history and say, look, we went wrong here somewhere. We used to be healthier. Y'all know previous generations didn't have the same type of illnesses that we have. Alzheimer's, I didn't know anybody when I was a kid. I was born in the middle 60s, okay? When I was a kid, I did not know any of my friends, grandparents, or anybody that had Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia. It just wasn't known of. Matter of fact, I probably had ADHD, but I didn't know it. But I didn't know anybody diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. They didn't have any of that when I was growing up. You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, in the 70s and 80s and 90s especially, this stuff just went nutso, right? And now it's ridiculous. It's bankrupting our country because and people that are ill, now it takes 2 other people to take care of this person. Now we got 3 people out of the workforce. And we wonder why we're in financial problems, right? Why we're not productive. I mean, I'm just being honest with you guys. I mean, these things are, you know, if we think about them, we already know that something's not right here. And we're not addressing the underlying problem, and that's my concern. I think we're starting to think that way. I think that now we've got some people that are finally bringing some things to truth, to light, that is going to bring out some good things. But we got a long ways to go, and it's up to us to push this thing forward too. So you just make the right decisions and then pass it on to your family is how things really get changed. You know what I'm saying? Everything it changes when public opinion changes about things. So this is where we start, okay? So sleep, we already talked about you got to have a healthy microbiome. So our probiotics are going to be critical. You're probably going to need to be supplementing with that, okay? Digestion is absolutely critical. So let's talk about not only improving our diet, but what about the size of our meals? If you overload your digestibility, you're not going to break down your food well. And if you run your insulin up, you run your blood sugar up, okay, you're going to affect your gut health. So diet, what you eat is critical, but the amount that we eat and when we eat it all matters too. And by the way, even the environment we eat it in. We eat most of our food either driving down the road in our car, we're standing up. Yeah, exactly. That's what my point is. We're rushed and we're stressed. We don't sit down, relax, and get into a parasympathetic mode where we can actually digest. And we're like, oh, I don't feel good after I ate that. Well, it probably wasn't the food. It's probably the fact that you ate it in like 5 minutes in between seeing patients here in the office. You know, no, we don't do that. We try to take a break. But if you don't, you know, you wonder why I didn't digest well. Diet is absolutely critical. Now I'm going to hit you with a hard one now. How about exercise? You got to have exercise for your gut brain to be healthy. You have to have some movement. Your body was created to move. Okay? Now, you don't have to be 2 hours in the gym every day. You don't have to be in the gym at all. But you do need to move. And you need to have some activity. And the problem is we don't move much. We got a guy that we just started. He can't walk real well, one of our patients. And so because of previous surgery and some other things that went bad. But we got him a little thing at his desk that he can pedal. At least he can't get up and walk a lot. Okay, but he can move his feet some. Everybody can do something. Everybody can do more. And then the last thing here is we got to deal with our stress. And one of the ways we deal with our stress is by being social. We have to have social interaction. Okay? We have to have good input from other human beings. Okay? We don't digest well without that. Our brain doesn't work well without that. There's certain things that I can't adjust you out of that. I can't nutrition supplement you out of that. I can't diet coach you out of that. You need some interaction. These are things that are foundational to good health. Okay. Did I get to your question yet, Miss Linda?
Referring back to how we did probiotics.
Yeah.
When they created refrigeration,
Yeah.
people stopped fermenting their food
Yeah.
to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost a lot of it right there, didn't we? We lost a lot of it, and very few of us eat fermented foods anymore today. Plus, I mean, our soil's already depleted, like we said, and things like that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons that things went wrong. And conveniences, I mean, we love them, right? You love technology, you love advancement, you love conveniences, but you better know how to adapt to them. That's like these phones. I love our phones, right? But man, your posture's like this all the time. Dr. Crooks is always getting on our patients like, yeah, your shoulders are so rounded forward because you're always in this position. You're stressed out and you already got too much tension here. And then your head's forward and you don't ever open up and just get outside and walk around with some good posture and breathe some real air, not reconditioned air. Get it before it's been conditioned, right? I mean, good. Well, I love technology. Don't get me wrong, but we got to know how to combat it, guys. Okay. So I'm gonna close with this. Okay, that I've said this before. I'm gonna say it again because it bears repeating. Story about a guy walking the beach in Florida. I like beaches. Y'all notice I talk about beaches. Okay. My wife's really a beach person, but I got it from her. He's walking and he sees a little boy walking down the beach, and he sees the boy. He's walking toward him, and he's picking up stuff and he's throwing in the ocean. He's picking up stuff, he's throwing in the ocean, and he's getting up there to him. And he realizes that the tide's gone out, and these starfish have washed up on the beach, and these starfish are stranded there. And so the boy's tossing them back in, and the old wiser man walks up to him and says, "Son, you realize that there's thousands of these on this beach, and there's hundreds of beaches all around here just like this." He said, "You can't possibly make a difference." And the boy, in his childhood wisdom, bends down and picks up a starfish and tosses it back in the ocean and says, "To that one, I made a difference." we wish we could change everything and everybody, but we can't. But we can change one person at least, and that's the one sitting in your chair. So what I'm going to do tonight, if you want to get checked out, we're going to do an amazing offer. I don't have enough for everybody here to sign up for 1 month. I do 5 gut brain cases a month. That's it, because it takes a lot of time, and I can't do them all and do them right more than 5 a month and still see everybody else. But our gut brain, matter of fact, will you get our paperwork, Kim, and bring that for them so they can see that, okay? And bring them some pens as well if they want to do that. It's a 2-day process, okay? And here's what we do. We do some blood work on our own, and we review any blood work that you have. But we look at some things that we can't tell from other things, like whether you're anemic, okay, whether you have infections. So we look at a complete blood cell count with differential. That's covered in this. And then we do 5 home tests to check your inflammation, your candida levels, okay, for your adrenal function, your thyroid function, and anything that we think it may affect the gut health. Then we also do a metabolic questionnaire for what symptoms, what conditions, what organs and things might be involved in the process. And then we do an in-office evaluation. In-office evaluation, we look at the nervous system. We look at the autonomic nervous system. We need to know, are you parasympathetic or are we sympathetic dominant? If we can't turn this around, nothing else is going to matter. Okay? And then we compile all that information. Once we get all of our tests back, then we sit down and we go over it with you. And we tell you where you're at, what stage you're in, what action steps you need to take at that point. Okay? So if you want to do that 2-day process, I normally do that. That's $495 for the testing, for the 2 days to 2 visits, and the recommendation. All right? I'm going to do it for $95 for anybody that wants to do it. I can do 5 this month. I can do 5 more next month. Okay? $95 evaluation, 2 days. So we put our time in for that, basically the cost of the lab. Okay, and so she'll pass out a sheet of information for you to do that, and y'all can sign up for that. The first 5 I'll do this month. Okay, all right. Now, while she's getting that, what questions do you have? I explained everything so well.
You did, yes.
No, I must have.
You explained it very well.
Yes, ma'am. I'll get you next.
Okay, when you do find a gut brain problem, it depends on what you find as to what direction you go to treat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so let's talk about the repair process, okay? Because depending on what level of severity you're in, okay, if you got upregulated infections, okay, and you got all the leaky gut signs, you even got autoimmunity, you're probably looking at a 3-month recovery process. Us working with our nutrition coaches through that process, going through certain nutritional protocols, that's the worst case scenario, okay? If you got, hey, most things are going along pretty well, you just haven't really dealt with this or haven't dealt with this recently, you're probably looking at a 6 to 8 week maybe process. You know what I'm saying? And again, some of the things you know from working with this before is you gotta remove triggers. This is what you always got to do, guys. Okay? This is with any leaky gut.